gained or captured by big tech. 40% of the national advertising budget. Another 40% is captured by the influencers, and 10% by television, another 10% by others, the rest of the 10%. What do you mean by others? Radio, newspapers, billboards. So at least if you make very deeper calculation, these are rough data that I'm telling you. If you calculate the deeper, make a deeper calculation, about 60% of the advertising market is going out of your country by the either American companies or Chinese companies. So what's happening to media landscape, industry in our own countries? The print is already in the verge of Pansakula, I would say. The television and radio are in ICU. So how can we sustain good journalism for public discourse, information system? On the other hand, every citizen is connected now, and also more than half Sri Lanka is, I think, about 60-65% people are citizens are on making content, not only on social media. They are making content. They are making opinion. 2 weeks back, we had a workshop by UNDP in Sri Lanka, where one of the, I'm not going to name the organization or person because I'm sure he's also based on rough data, but he said, if you can buy 100 anonymous pages in Sri Lanka, you can manipulate the elections. So we are talking about integrity of elections here, integrity of information ecosystem. Sarah very correctly said we need monitoring systems. But I would go one step further. You monitor and they do what? Online safety acts cannot solve these problems because these are domestic laws. But the problems are outside the country. We saw in Myanmar, when it happened in Rohingya crisis, most of the content were not developed in Myanmar. It came from Middle East. For Sri Lankan content, it's not produced basically in Sri Lanka, out of Sri Lanka. So how online safety acts going to solve the issues? So my point is here, and also specifically during elections, we know there are 3 areas where disinformation is heavily engaged in. Number 1, elections. Number 2, public health. Number 3, environment. So elections is number 1 for disinformation. Of course, we can monitor, but be mindful, we can monitor social media, but we cannot monitor messaging apps. Who toppled what was the communication method in Nepal a couple of months back of Gen Z? The communication was done through an app called, what is the name of this? Discord. Gaming app. It's a gaming app. Have you ever heard of it? You know? So this is how the communication is happening, and how can you monitor these things? How can you monitor Telegram? We know in Sri Lanka during Aragalaya, most of the violence were coordinated through Telegram groups. Whom to monitor that? But social media we can monitor. Even then, if we monitor, how you comply with our monitoring reports. We saw how Election Commission was struggling with tech companies. Mr. Faiz himself sat with us during discussions with the tech companies, but how far they were flexible or listening to Election Commission. So the issue is huge. We have massive, massive problem here. I don't think our policymakers, our leaders, or even academia we have understood the issue, number 1. Number 2, even if we have understood how to design response mechanisms. Nation states alone cannot do that. I think in June, OMA is here, Factum organizes EPICS conference, mobilizing at least 11 countries in Global South. So nation state cannot do it alone. So we need cross-border, cross-regional collaboration to shake the big tech. Otherwise, we can't shake them. They will not listen to you. They are not even listening to big countries. What about Sri Lanka? Just forget about Sri Lanka. I'll stop here.
Thanks. The next panelist is Dr. Nisanka Sanjeevani Ariratna, Senior Lecturer from University of Ruhuna. Dr. Ariratna holds a PhD from the University of Rajasthan, focusing on post-conflict reconstruction in Sri Lanka. Her research covers gender, development, and public policy. She has published widely in South Asia and international and received the C.L. Vikramasinghe Prize and the HETC PhD Scholarship for Academic Excellence. My question to you, Nisanka, how can gender equality be more effectively promoted within Sri Lanka's political system, particularly in increasing women's representation and participation in decision-making roles? Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir, giving this opportunity. Yes, gender equity is an important concept. So, recognizing the importance of gender equity, it was incorporated as third key objective in the Millennium Development Goals and further emphasize gender equity Goal 5 in the Sustainable Development Goal. It is very obvious gender equality is most important. That's why the gender equity incorporated Millennium Development Goals and as well as Sustainable Development Goal. So, however, data show that women are underrepresented at all levels of decision making worldwide and that achieving gender parity in political life is so far off. According to the data of UN Women website, just 19 countries have women head of states and 22 countries have women head of governments. So according to their prediction, gender equity is the highest position will not be reached for another 130 years. Compiled data by UN Women show that present women representation in globally 22.9 as cabinet members. Only 9 countries which women hold around 50% or more of cabinet members. Only 27.2% parliamentarian in single houses or lower houses. When it's come to Sri Lankan scenario, although gender equality is frequently discussed in Sri Lanka, the country is still lags far behind achieving it. In the present parliament, out of 225 parliamentarians, only 22 are female as a percentage 9.7. So in the cabinet, out of 23 cabinet ministers, only 2 are women as a percentage 8.6. So it is very obvious. So the Sri Lanka also not achieve successful level in women representation in politics. So there are some suggestions how we can increase women representation in the decision-making level. So one of the most used method is mandatory gender quotas. So this is very popular method implemented in many countries like Argentina, India, Bolivia, Burundi, Canada, Bangladesh, etc. But mandatory gender quotas quotas good but risk. Why I am saying it is risk? The quota system was introduced with a specific purpose. The quota does not mean just sending women to upper houses or lower houses. It means not increasing women heads in the decision-making bodies. The quota system should be address skillful and capable women who are not economically strong and do not come from strong political family backgrounds. Although women reach decision-making levels to the quota system, many do not contribute effectively to rational policy making or sustainable development in the country. So under that circumstance, quota system not effective. So quota system is good, but we should use it effectively. So another suggestion to increase women representation in the decision-making level, promote awareness campaigning that challenge traditional gender roles and promote safe environment. Under that, implement strict measures against harassments. The next one, increasing women representation at decision-making levels require well-structured action plan. For Sri Lanka to reach the target of women representation at decision-making levels by 2030 or 2040, it must establish clear, comprehensive roadmap. So we need to identify before implementing to that proposal. So we need to identify strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. This is one thing. Then next one is change traditional attitudes and encourage girls to see themselves as leaders. This should be addressed to the school curriculum beginning at the primary levels. So the last suggestion to increase women representation in politics, so it is important to incorporate in gender awareness and leadership development into school curriculum. It's essential to build a more equitable and inclusive society. So these are my suggestions.
Thank you, Nisanka. Thanks. So it's a sort of a life cycle approach that you are proposing, right? Starting from school, going in the life cycle ladder, right? Okay. Now, next panelist is Dr. Ramesh Ramasamy. He's a senior lecturer in political science from University of Peradeniya. Dr. Ramasamy holds a PhD in policy and governance studies in South Asia under NORAD project. His research focuses on governance quality, institutional trust, and citizenship. He is the author of Democracy from Below, published in 2023, and co-editor of the forthcoming Routledge volume, Democracy, Popular Protest and Repression, The Rise and Fall of Aragalaya in Sri Lanka. Now, my question to Ramesh is on inclusivity and accessibility. The question, measures can be taken to ensure that all eligible citizens, including persons with disabilities, older voters, and communities, have equal access to participate in elections without barriers. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me begin by thanking the Election Commission for inviting me to be part of this important and timely panel discussion. And as the Chair and Dr. Sarah mentioned, election commissions are the key watchdog institutions in a functional democracy. Success of an election and the legitimacy of the election outcome largely depends on the independence of election commission, impartiality of the election commission, fairness of the election commission, and effectiveness and efficiency. These elements largely shape the independence of election commission in a functional democracy. I would like to highlight two important points with regards to recent development in Sri Lanka in relation to free and fair elections, for which actually I would like to draw two important reports published in 2025. One is IDEA International, International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, which is based in Sweden. The report highlights that Sri Lanka has improved its position in democracy by 15 places in the latest report. Sri Lanka is ahead of India in the latest report published by IDEA International. They have considered 4 indicators in the report: representation, rule of law, rights, and participation. These are the 4 indicators taken into consideration in the report. Sri Lanka has scored maximum in the electoral participation indicator. So they have taken into consideration 2 important elections took place in 2024, parliamentary and presidential election. According to the report, those elections were competitive, transparent, efficient, free and fair. So therefore, Sri Lanka has been ranked 58th place out of 168 countries in the 2025 report, which is a significant improvement in Sri Lanka's history of free and fair election. And the second report is, which is quite popular and a well-known think tank institution based in America, Freedom House, which ranks 208 countries every year. They measure several indicators to rank democracy in 288 countries, in which rule of law, civil liberty, functioning of government, political rights, and participation are taken into account, in which Sri Lanka has scored 4 out of 4 political rights. Sri Lankan citizens have equal access to participate in the electoral process, and elections are free and fair, transparent, competitive in Sri Lanka. So that also shows Sri Lanka's improvement in free and fair elections. And what is interesting is that India was once considered as the largest democracy in the world. Now India was once considered as the largest democracy in the world. Now Sri Lanka is ahead of India. And we know what is happening in India under the current government. Free and fair election is no more there in India. So that is why I think Sri Lanka's election commission was, recognized as the election commission of the year for the award, which was, which held in Botswana recently. So these things indicate us our improvement in free and fair elections. And now coming to the question with regards to inclusion and accessibility in the electoral process. The idea of universal franchise is that all the eligible citizens, irrespective of their identity, ethnicity, birthplace, political affiliation, gender, and so on, should have equal access to political participation. That's the whole idea of universal franchise. And there's a famous slogan, one person, one vote. One vote, one value. These are some of the worldwide slogans used to advocate for equal political participation across the world. And the idea of non-discrimination has been very clearly ensured in our present constitution. So therefore, in the case of Sri Lanka, though there are improvements in relation to accessibility, participation in the electoral process, still there are some drawbacks, shortcomings that we need to address. When it comes to persons with disability, which is an important area that we need to think seriously in the future elections, how to improve accessibility and inclusion for persons with disability. Sri Lanka is a state party to the International Convention on Persons with Disability. Article 29 of the convention states that state parties shall guarantee to persons with disabilities political rights and the opportunity to enjoy them on an equal basis with others. Therefore, state parties should ensure persons with disabilities can effectively and fully participate in political and public life on an equal basis with others directly or through freely chosen representatives, including the right and opportunity for persons with disabilities to vote and be elected in the elections. So it is the responsibility of the government of Sri Lanka and the Election Commission to ensure equal access to persons with disability in the electoral process. I would say there are some improvements. For instance, I would say in the last elections, the Election Commission had introduced a special ballot paper for the persons with disability, and also they are conducting voter education targeting the persons with disability with the support of IFES. And also they are checking the accessibility in the polling stations. These are some of the notable improvements. Still, there are areas to be improved. For instance, safe road access to the polling stations should be improved further in certain areas, and volunteer supports to assist persons with disability in casting their votes, and proper lighting system in the polling stations to enable persons with disability to use their franchise. And keeping the ballot box at the lower size is also another concern we should make in the future. So these measures could be adopted in the future to enable equal participation of persons with disability in the electoral process. And at the same time, these are applicable to older voters too. And coming to minorities or the marginalized communities, compared to other countries, voter registration is extremely good in Sri Lanka compared to other countries. But still we are following the manual system that I will discuss later. But still there are areas, certain places, districts, where the registration is extremely difficult because of the lack of Grama Niladhari divisions. For instance, I would say in the Nuvareliya district, even in Puttalam, there are some Grama Niladhari divisions with 10,000 people, 8,000 people. So one single Grama Niladhari has to handle 8,000, 10,000 people's voter registration, which is extremely difficult, which we need to address in the future to enable some segments of society to effectively take part in the electoral process. And also, there's another challenge in certain areas, that is election violence, especially in the districts of Kegol. Dr. Sara knows very well than me, in Ratnapura, Monaragala, where minorities are being targeted by certain organized political groups during the election. Pre- and post-election violence are very common in the plantation areas. So that we need to address. Because of the sense of fear, people are reluctant to go to polling stations. And they tend to have a strong feeling, my vote is not going to make any significant change. So we need to change this attitude among the minorities and marginalized communities. So these are some of my initial thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramesh. Now, the second round. And I hope that you will stick to your 5 minutes timeline. My question to Dr. Sara: how can greater stakeholder engagement, particularly with political parties, civil society, and the media, contribute to building credibility and transparency in the electoral process?
Thank you. You know, I think a key factor, apart from the Election Commission in all of this, is political parties. My understanding of Sri Lankan political parties is that they're run like family fiefdoms. There is no internal party democracy. Now, they govern like family fiefdoms, then they get elected, and we expect them to govern democratically and transparently. That's a big ask. They have no training in doing that whatsoever. You know, so I think the first point that I would make is this, is that, look, those of us who are interested in our governance, we should consider actually joining political parties and giving them a democratic structure. You know, we really ought to free up our political parties. Secondly, I think the whole question with regard to getting people more involved in politics is that we have to get them more interested in the romance of politics, the romance of democracy. You know, everywhere in the world you look today, particularly the left of center parties, they're stale. that whole binary concept of left wing and right wing is going. You know, today we had Mohammed Mamdani, the youngest mayor of New York, the first Muslim mayor of New York. He came from nowhere, as it were. But he came with a definite message that posed a challenge to the establishment and is defeating one of New York's oldest, strongest political families, the Cuomo family. So the second point, I think, is that we need to come up with what we really stand for. Because too often, I think the way that elections are conducted is people vote against rather than for. And there is a tremendous disappointment as a consequence. We have public outpourings and demonstrations and all of that, but when it comes to what follows in terms of government, people are lost. Often the action against authoritarianism ends up in only consolidating authoritarianism. So that's another factor I think that's important to consider is that, look, if you are going to take extra-parliamentary action, non-violent, extra-parliamentary action to change things, have a program of governance, you know. The other point, of course, is that, and I say this because I'm acutely aware that I think it applies to this government, and I've said this more than once, is that, look, when you get into government, you have to hit the road running. You have a 158-seat majority, 159 with the Speaker, and what have you done with it? What are you going to do with it? It's wasted if you don't hit the road running with a number of areas. And as I say, I mean, you know, yes, we have the IMF package that we are supposed to be, you know, under. By 2027, we will be out of it. But the point is that, look, we must be able to chew gum and play ball at the same time. This is the government of the country. Everything can't be the IMF, you know. So the second point, of course, therefore, is that when a party states that they're going to do X and Y for change, we need to make sure that we hold them to it. Because very often they get away with, well, in some cases, blue murder. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll quickly go to the second question. Ajanta. What are the key risks and challenges associated with adopting advanced election technologies, particularly in terms of cybersecurity, accessibility, and public trust?
I think, as I said earlier as well, that technology is good to augment what we have in the systems, but we have to make sure that we take the right precautions, especially on the cyber security, accessibility, and the public trust. So there are ways that we can encrypt the data when we are sending across, and then we can have different two-factor, three-factor authentications, and then we can have penetration tests. So many things are there. But that is like when we getting up a system done and electronically we are communicating. But I think we have to look into two different things. First is the election system, and what you talk about from the media side, it's a completely different ball game, and it's like almost impossible to tackle as well. But however, yeah, first I'm talking with respect to those, like in an election system, how safe we have to be, because we have to give public trust, and the people should accept that accessibility as well as accept that. So there are ways, that's what like, it's just not introducing technology to an existing system. will solve it because it is prolonged. So it's just not a sprint, it's a marathon. So it's like you have to work hard throughout, then only like you can achieve, because you might do well in this election, next election you will not do, like if you have not taken enough precautions. Of course there's monetary value comes in, because there's investment has to be there. So these are not cheap. So because technology is not cheap, right? That's why like one thing has to be looked into. But technology can provide us some of the benefits and the speed and the efficiency, and also like transparency that we are looking at. So to achieve that, we have to invest proper and proceed. But yes, when it comes to media, that's where like, so that's so many other things. That's where like we have to come up with maybe different models. But however, let's like Facebook or YouTube or whatever, we can block, but it does not make that. So there are so many other various ways of doing that. So then how to tackle that, or what the challenge now, it comes to the Election Commission to make the public awareness, like how to keep with you rather than making the attention of the public to some other channel. So that's the challenge. I think that is what I also feel, because there's no way of, we can think of during the election period blocking all the digital media and no communication, nothing. Only for the Election Commission will have that. So that is not going to work. But people is connected, as you said, like it's very, very, now everyone knows. But only thing is we have to have a very good communication with the people, with the Election Commission. That I would say trust should come to the Election Commission. Then only like you can then and there make some announcement when people should trust it. But you have to keep that acceptance with the whole public, right? That's why like it has to be very unbiased. It should be unfair, like, and then you have to have a very audited process and a transparent process. So what I say that is like, yes, systems, yes, we can secure and we can make sure there are enough precautions we can take. Cybersecurity is a big threat. Yes, that also we can, but nothing is 100%. So I will not guarantee at this audience 100%. I would say 99.999. So that is what keeping 0.001%, at least something can happen. So that will be. So that's why like in technology, we can't give 100% guarantee. There's no 100% security as such. But however, we can take as much maximum as possible precautions. But when it comes to the social media side, then that has to be looked into a different way. But that I think we have to build through trust, and a new channel has to be created. That's where like the most trusted channel that during the election period of this particular whatever, right? So that is what we have to work on, and that to make sure that throughout, like through next election, we have to do that campaign as well.
Yes. You said that technology is expensive. Yes, true. But technology is not static also. It is dynamic. And then today's technology will be cheaper than tomorrow's technology. Right? That's what we have experienced so far. Even if you look at all these technologies that we have been using, smartphones and all that, right? And also I should say that Election Commission has been, in fact, getting involved in improving the public trust in the election process. Even on the election day itself, we have been doing a lot of programs to make the public aware of the process, electoral process, and also to make them believe in what we do actually, right? And also improve their trust, especially in the dissemination of results and all that, because that is very important. So that is where the technology has to come in, because the time gap between the voting, conclusion of voting, results dissemination has to be smaller, right? Okay. Then we'll go to Dr. Ranga Kalansurya for second question. What challenges institutions face in maintaining independence and accuracy in election reporting, and how might these be addressed through regulation or self-governance? You responded a bit
Yeah.
in the first question, but you can elaborate more.
Yes, thank you. By the way, I like your screen. The fire. Anyway, fireside talk. No? Yes. Well, let me. I think I try to address as you. Well, let me. I think I try to address as you said some of these challenges. But let me address this in another angle. Three countries in our region faced. Three countries in our region faced change of regime through protest movements, starting with Sri Lanka in 2022, Aragale, followed by Bangladesh, and then Nepal, 2024, Bangladesh, 25 in Nepal. So all these three protest movements had very unique similarities. Engagement of youth, Gen Z, technology, and also within very limited time frame, quick, massive mobilizations, and then getting back to democracy. Yes, two of these countries, like Sri Lanka and Nepal, were just after relatively free and fair elections, within very short period of time of after elections. That means people voted them in, and then also people distracted from them. There was a huge gap within very short period of time. And then what happened after these protest movements? You come back to the same process of democracy. Look at Sri Lanka. We followed the constitution. We had a substitute government. Protesters went home, of course. But somebody else captured the power, got the power, came into politics. The country was back on track. What's happening in Bangladesh now? Of course, the Prime Minister has to fled. Professor Yunus took the government in August last year. He made drastic changes or attempted for some changes outside the constitution, what Sarah said. So his attempts were not into the constitution, outside the constitutional process. Now they have announced elections in February. What does it mean? We are going back to the people to get the mandate. But the problem Bangladesh is facing now is to legitimize what the decision they have made for the last 1.5 years. So the discussion now is whether you have a referendum to get the approval of the people of what they have done out of the constitution. So first referendum and then election, or election first and then referendum. This is the discussion in Bangladesh now. Nepal, they have announced election in March after massive violent protest movement. The crux of the matter here is, of course, we have been talking about getting youth involved in the discourse. But in all these three circumstances of protest movements, the cardinal players were youth, Gen Z. Who are these Gen Z? 16, 17, 20, 21. The big question is whether do they understand the norms of democracy? How far they can get involved in the process of governance, democratic process. This is the big question now, challenging issue in front of us. How can we get them involved? And where are they get involved? Facebook, YouTube, is for us, Professor Lakshman and us, after 50s. They are on Instagram. They are on TikTok. They are on new platforms. One of my colleagues went to Bolivia 2 weeks back, Bolivia, to look into the engagements of the marginalized groups. So they were taken to thick of Amazon jungle to meet these tribal. So I asked my friend, what were they doing? How they interact? No, don't worry. They are TikToking. These in the thick of Aborigines in the Amazon jungle, they were TikToking. So this is the society we are getting into. How far have we understood this dynamic? So the point I want to make here, you started with the word trust. So how you established the element of trust with the youth, with the marginalized groups who are heavily connected on digital platforms and communicating through discrete platforms. How we monitor and respond and build trust on that. Very quickly on legacy media, I think there is no future. We cannot think of good future without good journalism, good public interest content, even by citizens. The problem in most of the media regulatory bodies now, like very trusted Indonesian Press Council, is to how you get influencers, the content creators, into the realm of public interest content. How you make sure these influencers create public interest content, which is helpful for the democracy. So now they are in the process of identifying these influencers and getting them into the fray. So we have to get engaged with youth, number one. Also, as governments, we need to find some mechanism to sustain the legacy media also. We can't let them die and also get this encroached by big tech companies from US or China. So there should be a mechanism within the government, within the nation state, how you ensure the survival or sustaining of the legacy media. Some countries have taken steps into that, giving tax rebates or help them to sustain, establishing new institutions, pumping more fuel to the system. Otherwise, we cannot fight this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. I fully agree with you, Ranga, to get the youth involved, right? They have to get them engaged rather, right? Because you see now, I've seen so many generations during my half a century career in the university, right? From 70s and millennials and Gen Z, if you take them separately from older generations like ours, they are smarter than us. I mean, there's no question about it. This is what I have seen. They are smart and they are globally connected, techno-savvy. And what has gone wrong is that we see them through our experiences. I think what is need to be done, we have to get them on board and we should actually see from their perspectives. Unless we do that, we will not be able to get them engaged meaningfully. Because you see now, this is what this is the mistake that the older generation make. Rather than looking from their angle, their eyes, or their perspectives, what we try to do is to look at their issues and problems, their expectations, desires from our own experiences and idea. Because this is where we need to actually rethink and adjust ourselves. And Dr. Nisanka, that is the next question is, what cultural, institutional, or structural barriers continue to limit women's political empowerment? And what strategies could help create a more gender responsive political environment?
Thank you, sir. It is It is obvious that a range of structural and cultural barriers have limited gender-wise political representation. So, patriarchal teaching first and foremost under that. It is very clear that patriarchal teaching enriched by ancient political teachings. Through that political thoughts, women propounded as passive characters. The ancient political philosophers wanted to women limited into private sphere. They don't like to come into women into public sphere. So then prominent Greek philosophers, for example, Plato and Aristotle, their theoretical teachings developed to establish masculine state. Plato introduced a specific education system for formation of ideal state men, not for ideal state women. Then Aristotle wanted to establish realistic state. He did not consider women as a citizen in his ideal state. So those teaching actually started women limited into the politics, and the politics is basically those teaching consider women not suitable for politics. So one of the political philosopher, Hegel, he emphasized that women's inability to control the state. I would like to mention his one of statement. When women hold the helm of government, the state is at once in jeopardy because women regulated their action not by demands of universality, but by arbitrary inclination and opinion. So eventually these political thoughts may be fundamental to women apart from power relations. So this teaching promoted male supremacy and male monopoly in politics. During many centuries, women also not considered they are agent or parts of political sphere. Even today, women are backward to approach political sphere because there is no positive attitude about women. Harmful gender norms not totally wipe out in many societies. Some roots are still remaining as a hidden factors. So those factors actually women reluctant to approach to the politics. So what strategies we can use for that? So we can use gender sensitive approach to enhance women participation in politics. So one of the approach, gender and development approach. We called this approach as GET. It's shortened form. For example, GET is an approach seek to correct system and mechanism that produce gender inequality by focusing not only women, but also by assessing social status of both women and men. So basically, this approach addresses participatory and empowering, equitable, free from violence, respecters of human rights, supportive of self-determination and actualization of human potential. So using that GET approach to increase women politics at some extent level of results. So this is one of the solution for that. So then another important factor is collect and analysis sex disaggregated data. That particular data provide awareness existing inequalities based on gender. So it is important to address what are the failures of women, why they are not approached to the women. So we can use actually that GET approach. So that approach is one of the good approach to address those issues.
Thank you. Thank you, Nisa. Now, next question, the second round. Dr. Ramesh, how can innovations in election management, outreach, and infrastructure design promote greater inclusivity and voter participation across different regions and demographic groups in Sri Lanka?
Yes, thank you. So we have been discussing about digital technologies. We are living in a digital world. So therefore, innovation is an important area to improve electoral process in Sri Lanka, which would in turn enable marginalized groups, vulnerable groups in our society to actively, meaningfully participate in the electoral process. So what I observe is that there's a great deal of hesitance and opposition for innovation in the electoral process in Sri Lanka. This is not on the part of Election Commission. I observe this is on the part of policy makers. So policy makers tend to have a feeling that we will continue the traditional electoral practices in Sri Lanka. The traditional electoral practices in Sri Lanka have largely encouraged malpractices, electoral malpractices, right? Corruption, vote buying, all this nepotism, patron clientelism, all these malpractices have been largely increased in Sri Lanka simply because of traditional electoral practices. So in order to fight these malpractices, electoral malpractices, we need to adopt innovation. We need to go for innovative technologies, ideas, strategies to prevent, to minimize these electoral malpractices. In developing countries, basically in the global south, because of these conventional electoral methods and practices, these countries have become patronage democracy, right? Where you can easily buy votes, right? There is no, integrity or other basic ethics that we follow in the electoral process. So in order to overcome these issues, I have some policy prescriptions. So we can debate and discuss these policy prescriptions in detail if it is necessary. One is we need to introduce digital voter registration process. As I mentioned earlier, it is still manual and it consumes a lot of time and there are practical challenges in the manual electoral registration. So therefore, we can go for digital voter registration process in order to increase accessibility, which is practiced in many other parts of the world, especially in the advanced countries. And secondly, we need to go for data-driven planning. Because in some parts of the country, voter turnout is very low. In some particular polling stations, voter turnout is very low. So we need to have data to make some plan based on the data and evidence, how to improve voter participation, voter turnout in certain areas where that is extremely low. Why they are not interested in election, why they are not ready to trust the electoral process. So therefore, data-driven planning is very much important. Based on that, we can make some target interventions to improve voter participation. And as Dr. Sarah and others repeatedly mentioned, social media platform sometimes leads to misinformation, disinformation, and sometimes it also encourages voters to participate in the election. So we have to regulate. Unfortunately, I think at present, we don't have a national social media policy in this country to regulate social media. That is an important area we should seriously consider in the future to regulate social media. And also accessible polling stations. Some of these polling stations are in remote, faraway places where some people are unable to access these polling stations. Older generation, other persons with disability, and some ethnic minorities. Because there are some polling stations in the ethnic majority areas where Tamils and Muslims are numerically minority. They are so scared to go to those polling stations because of organized mob violence. So how are we going to overcome these challenges? So we need to innovatively think of it. And the better transportation. Sri Lanka's public transport is extremely worse, I would say. Right? So we need to improve the public transport system to enable effective and meaningful participation of the Sri Lankan voters. And very importantly, I would recommend advanced voting in Sri Lanka. This is an area we should seriously discuss. Because on average, according to available data, I looked at last presidential and the parliamentary election, where I found on average 2 million Sri Lankans do not go to polling stations. Due to variety of reasons. Work commitment, transport issue, personal engagement, and so on. So we need to enable, we need to support these people, professionals and daily workers, garment factory workers and so on to exercise their franchise, universal franchise, which is a fundamental human right. So we need to introduce advanced voting. We can use different names actually, early voting system, mobile voting system, online voting system. We can use different names. So all of which actually enable certain segments to effectively participate in the electoral process.
Thank you, Ramesh. And when you look at the amount of data, information that the Election Commission possesses, huge. Now, take for example, voter turnout, right? So we talk about voter participation here, enhancing voter participation. But I have been, in fact, talking to my colleagues here at the Commission. Can I get those data to do some analysis? Because you need to find voter turnout by gender, by ethnicity, by regions. So unless you have those information, how would you reach those marginalized communities or disadvantaged groups? But we don't have that information. So that is an area we should be actually focusing on, right? So I fully agree with what you just said. Now it's Q&A session. So friends, you can have a little rest, but it depends on the questions that they are going to ask you, right? Okay, now we welcome questions from the audience, but please be precise and short and focus. And when you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. Somebody will bring you the microphone. Yes, please.
Good morning. My name is Thavalingam from Delimitation Commission. It is a little out of this theme. When I see this fire, in Sri Lanka now fire is provincial council elections. So I thought of asking, now in Sri Lanka, we introduce or practice 3 systems or electoral systems. Now everyone says all systems are wrong or failed. Or someone says, go back to the proposal systems. Now when you see about this mixed system, we had done the delimitations, submitted a report to the parliament. It was defeated without giving any so good reasons. Hidden reasons are, it does not satisfy the minorities' issues. As Dr. Ramesh said, one man, one vote value, if you introduce that, how can you sort out these minorities' issues? So, there are some possibilities we propose to sort out through bonus seats, but it failed. I am not asking you to the solutions, but I want to know your views on this. How can you go with a system, new system or old system to have this election to see the democracy of the country? We say we have democracy, but we couldn't have this provincial council elections. Why it is so? Now see in Singapore, they have no democracy, but they sort out all these minorities issues. There's no issues about the electoral system in Singapore. So this is my question. I want to get your views, especially from Dr. Pakiso Saramuthu.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Sarah.
Well, with regard to the provincial council elections, my personal view is that the key people that are involved in it in terms of the political parties, they're not particularly interested in it. You know, I think that if we don't have provincial council elections by June of next year, we're probably not going to have them because the government's talking about constitutional reform, and constitutional reform will take into account provincial council and provincial devolution or autonomy or whatever. Remember, the party in power fought, and their followers and party members gave their lives against the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord. I remember once talking to now a powerful cabinet minister, and I said, look, if you change your position on devolution, you will win a lot of votes in Jaffna. They didn't change their position on devolution, and they did win a lot of votes in Jaffna. But the point was his answer that he gave me. He said, to change our position on devolution would be to betray our comrades who gave their lives in 1987-88 against the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord and provincial devolution. So I think what is going to happen is that there is not going to be a political settlement of what we called the ethnic conflict. What we're going to get is greater economic interdependence with India, who by the mid-2030s is going to be the third largest economy in the world, and we are going to be caught up in that economic sphere. The rest of Sri Lanka will have to ask themselves, are you going to join the party, or are you going to scream yourselves hoarse talking about economic sovereignty, and God knows what the hell that means?
Yes. Can't see. Right. You got the mic? No.
Thank you for the wonderful panel. I do have a question that I would like to ask as a youth. Why hasn't Sri Lanka considered absentee voting? I feel like we need to also include the diasporas who are around. What if we can actually, use absentee voting, because this is done in other countries? So why can't? And question. Apologies. So the first question was, why can't Sri Lanka go into absentee voting system? And the second one is because I believe that we also have migrants who are working hard to send remittances to the country. So shouldn't they also be involved in, how the government procedures also, make them feel included as well? We're not only talking about the marginalized communities, we also want to take inclusion to the next level. So I want to ask, one is about the absentee voting, and the second one is, how can we also give justice for the migrant workers who are giving remittances back to the country, which is, sustaining us with our foreign improvements and also our government spending?
Yeah, I can answer the second part of the question with regard to diaspora and the migrant workers. So this has been practiced in many countries across the world. They have set up polling stations in the embassies where migrant workers and diaspora can easily cast their vote. This is one way of ensuring their right to vote. And the second way is to ensure their right to vote is setting up online, voting system where they can cast their vote, right? But both these strategies need, privacy, safety and security, integrity. These are very important. Otherwise, there will be some issues. People can criticize, can challenge the voting process. Legitimacy. At the end of the day, the legitimacy is very important in any election. So these two strategies can be adopted to ensure their voting right.
Anybody else wants to respond? Right. In fact, this overseas voting, the one we just discussed, and there is a discussion going on at the moment. In fact, the Election Commission is having a meeting tomorrow afternoon, also together with some officers from the Foreign Affairs, I think, yes. And we also had a brainstorming session among ourselves a couple of weeks back in order to plan out how we can actually accommodate our own people who have migrated and who have the voting rights. Because we cannot ignore or leave out any single person from our electoral process, because it's a violation of constitutional rights. So that is in the process. And we try to accommodate the interest of every single citizen of this country. That I can tell you. Any other questions? And also, and also, this we are thinking of. We have been having a lot of discussion on advance voting as well, because some of the people who are in the workforce and they are unable to leave the workplace because of the nature of their work. So that is also on the discussion table. Thank you. Yes, please.
I'm Anila Bandaranaike, currently of the Delimitation Commission and also formerly of the Central Bank. Again, my question is a very broad one. First of all, thank you for a very fascinating and very useful discussion. Thanks to all the panelists. My question is, the issues we've discussed are all critical. And suppose we had the perfect electoral process, we had the perfect voter registration system, but if the type of candidates that come in through this system, if it's garbage in, it's garbage out. And we have this problem where, in my experience, I've worked throughout my life in the public sector, sat on various committees, subcommittees, commissions, etc. What I have seen is among many of the candidates, including cabinet ministers, there's often a complete lack of understanding of even the difference between policy making and micromanagement. There is very little understanding of the underlying socio-economic conditions that our people live under. There is very little understanding of financial literacy. I have sat on as an advisor on the Committee on Public Finance and been embarrassed by the kind of ignorance I have seen among our elected representatives. So my question is, one problem in Sri Lanka is that we have many government institutions working very well, but there is very little coordination for the ultimate objective, which is to put good, responsible people of integrity with knowledge and understanding of the issues of the people of this country into elected representation. So is there some way that there can be some coordination among all the institutions that work in this area to have some kind of an orientation of the elected representatives that come into the system for basic understanding of issues that would enable them to move policy forward and to look at the big picture rather than, whether there's a bad principal in a school in their area or whether the bus doesn't work, this kind of micro thing, instead of the big picture of basically raising the quality of life of our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can give you one example for that. One of the challenges we are facing with the national media policy. So one of the areas that identified just after Aragalaya to formulate national policies was media. Former DG Government Information is also here, Nalaka. And the then government appointed a committee of entirely independent experts to formulate this policy. I'm just giving you one example, how difficult it is. I'm sure you have seen this in your own sector as well. So this committee continued for 2 years, and there was a change of government. This government also decided to continue with the process with the same committee without any interference. But now the problem is from our own same fraternity, because they think there are different schools of thought from the same industry. Number one, this was appointed by the previous government, so they are carrying out the same agenda of the previous government, political agenda, number one. Number two, the second school of thought is, this government is trying to impose media control through so-called media policy. So there's a huge resistance from the industry itself. Not only from the policymakers and the government, the politicians, from our own peers. In fact, we have to recognize and admire the fact that apolitically, without any political engagement, this committee of experts continued. And it's happening. But the major challenge, number one, is to convince our own peers. Number two, as you said, how to convince the policymakers on this new change, because the policy was for 10 years. Then we have to address the issues like artificial intelligence, as this panel is also mentioned. How are we going to address this massive digital technology issue for next 10 years? But how you convince the policymakers on that, how far they understand the crux of the issue. I don't think it happened even when we brought RTI, Right to Information Act. As you know, 20 years of struggle, 2016, we brought the law. So we thought of giving some awareness to the parliamentarians before we bring it to parliament. I was Director General of Information that time, and we convened parliamentarians into a hotel, Water's Edge, for a briefing session. And we saw some resistance from, I think Sarah was there at that forum. Yes. So there was some resistance, even for RTI, by the politicians themselves. I can still remember one senior politician said, "Ape asane vasigiliya ka thada ganda be me wage na." So, but that was a level of understanding, even on very basic democratic value systems. But anyway, it was a unanimous decision by Parliament to pass RTI Act in 2016. I agree with you, it's a very tedious task. It's an upheaval task. But there are some success stories. It's not only about policymakers, but also with our now peers as well. It's level of understanding. So it's always a challenge. When it's about media, when it comes to financial matters, fiscal issues, I can imagine. You know.
Yes, I can also quickly make a remark. So this is actually the problem of electoral democracy, right? This is not only in Sri Lanka, across the world. This is a common phenomenon we are struggling with. So under the existing electoral system, it is extremely difficult to produce high quality politicians with integrity, honesty, all these values. right? So, and unfortunately, you can't set some educational qualifications for politicians or policymakers. They will go to Supreme Court and they will challenge it. Contesting in the election is a fundamental human right, so you can't put any barriers. So we need to find out some institutional mechanism to educate and train politicians before they come to politics or after they come to politics. And the responsibility partly lies with Parliament. I don't know how far into what extent Parliament is doing this. Or otherwise, we need to go beyond Parliament and we need to set up some kind of institutional mechanism, at least in the new constitution, I hope. Right? To change this culture. Because for the public servants, SLAS officers, SLPS officers, we have an institution to train them. Induction program, all kinds of training programs are being given at the SLEDA. But unfortunately for the politicians, we don't have such an institutional mechanism, which we need to discuss in the future.
Thank you. We don't have any other question. We conclude the Q&A session and move on to the final wrap-up session. Is that all right? Okay, thank you. Now, it's only 2 or 3 minutes responses. Dr. Sarah, looking ahead, what long-term strategies should be prioritized to sustain public confidence in Sri Lanka's democratic and electoral institutions? Just wrap up what you have already said, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the points with regard to artificial intelligence and digitalization and all of that still stand. I mean, we have to come up with ways in which we're going to deal with this because, as I said, into the future, we may not have an institution, and we need an institution nevertheless, that can authoritatively state, look, we've been through a free and fair electoral process, and that's the end of the story, as it were, without having, any number of disputations on the basis of AI and digitalization and all of that. The second point is that, when we say, what can we do to build public trust and confidence? I think that's the wrong question. Elections are the public's way of ensuring choice and change in a functioning democracy. It's the public's business. The public must get involved in restoring trust and confidence. It's not a culture of entitlement where we have to give them confidence and trust on a plate. So that's why I say that join political parties, come up with the set of governance reforms, etc., that you want, and let's proceed from there onwards. We are all part of it, and therefore we shouldn't single out and sort of say, look, it's your responsibility to restore public trust and confidence. And the third one, of course, is that, we have a fundamental rights chapter to our Constitution, and we can go to court. We should go to court. Ordinary citizens should go to court. We should use the RTI Act. We should get much more involved in the protection of our democracy.
Thank you. Ajanta, looking ahead, what innovative practices or technologies do you believe will define the next phase of election management and voter management in Sri Lanka?
Yes, I think, water, I think we discussed about the water management or like getting the databases coming. I think through, as I said earlier as well, through a SLUDI platform, so you should be able to integrate that and get the voters registered in a way that we are doing that, but we have to go next level, and then that can be completed. And also predictive analytics, that's where we all discuss about even forecasting and what's happening in the queue management. So that's all these things we can do through use of technology, again with AI as well, and do it and get some insights. And the other thing I would like to say, like, because here this time I saw here for the symposium, there are quite a lot of papers have been published as well. Just you also mentioned, sir, I think election commission under PDPA Act, but you should release some data as public data to do research. So that is, I think, one missing factor. I would say, like, so that we can see quite a lot of people do research and come up with so many new innovations as well. That's where, like, you can later on look at it and try to implement as well. So that part is missing. I think there are certain things we can't give, but of course there are quite a lot of information we can give. And also, like, I think with media, I think we have to have a public trusted channel. Channel in the sense like some communication channel, it's not a TV channel I'm talking about, channel, so that people will trust us, and then we can use that as a vehicle to attack with the misinformation. If not, like, it's quite difficult. It's not during the election time. I think if we can build throughout, so that will be good, and that is what I think Election Commission should be looking at on that and building that trust, so that if not, like, it's very, very difficult for me also to think of technology-wise how to mitigate some of the problems that we are going to face in the future with fake things that are coming as real, where you can't really believe that that is not true. So that's those are the things I'm also recommending. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is what Ranga has been, in fact, helping with the election commission, right? And Ranga, for you, looking ahead, what key steps should Sri Lanka take to ensure that both civil society and media continue to play a constructive role in safeguarding democracy and electoral integrity?
Yeah, given the 2 to 3 minutes time I have, I would summarize into a couple of points. Number one is capacity. I think we need to build capacity institutionally and also individually. When I say institutionally, I think we have seen a lot of improvement even within the Election Commission now, engaging in this specific areas of social media and AI and stuff. So we need more. And also in the citizens level, we need a lot of capacity building and literacy. It's a huge issue on literacy rate, on digital literacy, and even water literacy to that, but I'm not getting into that, but especially digital literacy and the standards. Number two, networking through engagement. Engagement with whom? With youth, content creators, influencers, of course with media. But networking is extremely important because a country like Sri Lanka alone cannot do this. I'm repeating my point here. We are a very small market. Australia could not do it alone. Even you brought laws to regulate media, social media. But New Zealand tried to do that. It's still a test run. Imagine Sri Lanka, small country. But if you put the entire region together, the Asia region is about 58% of the entire social media market. 58%. So the networking is extremely important, not only regionally, but cross-regionally also. Next year, we are trying to bring Asia and Africa media into one platform to fight this. So engagement, especially with youth, Gen Z, we are only talking about it, but we are not talking with them. This is the problem. I remember taking the youth into responsible positions. Sorry for mentioning the names here, but if you take even political parties like United National Party in early 80s, the leader Jaya Jayawardena selected a very young general secretary. He was only 28 when Harsha Abeyewardena was selected as general secretary. He was only 28. The biggest political party at that time had a general secretary of 28 years of age. So are we thinking in that line? Can you trust a Gen Z to give that kind of a position in Sri Lanka? So that's a change. That's what you call system change. So we need to engage, we need to network, we need to build capacity, and also finally, we need to define the democracy Asia need. I'm also struggling in my mind about this notion of democracy. What do the youth in Nepal wanted? What did the youth in Bangladesh wanted? Even what did the youth in Sri Lanka wanted? Is it the Western global north definition of democracy, or it's Asian identity focused democracy? This is a big question that we need to answer. In one of my own research work these days, I'm studying this particular subject. So I find this even 2,500 years ago, the Asian democratic value system of in the Vinaya Pitaka of discipline doctrine of the Tripitaka, the Buddhist doctrine, the democratic notions of the Vinaya Pitaka was far ahead of what Europe had that time. The democratic voting system, even referendum systems were within the Vinaya Pitaka. Fascinating. So we need to find out our own identity here, especially with the Asian value systems. We should have our own identity here. Sorry.
Thank you. I really like your approach, this generational approach, because that's very essential. What we have been neglecting throughout. Still, we haven't, in fact, discussed about Generation Alpha. They are so different. Who were born after 2013, right? We still talk about millennials and Gen Z, right? Dr. Nisanka, your wrap-up question is, looking ahead, what key initiatives or policy shifts would you recommend to advance gender equity and women's leadership in Sri Lanka politics?
Under that, I would like to emphasize 3 initiatives. The first, political parties must implement capacity development program at the party level to promote and development leadership qualities and skills both men and women. So this is first one. So unfortunately, as Ramesh mentioned, still we don't that kind of strong development program in the political party levels. So the political party levels also we can, and in the grassroots level, so we have to develop some programs focusing women to enhance their capacity, especially approach to the politics and representation in the decision-making level. So we don't have still a comprehensive plan for that. So this is one. And the second one, creating supportive mentorship programs. So these programs provide not only guidance and support, but also create network advocates within organizations who are committed to gender advancement. So the mentorship also most important to enhance capacity building of women. So the third one, encourage men and boys to allies in promote gender equity. So I think these things are most important to increase in future more women participating in the decision-making level. So that's all.
Thank you, Nisanka. Finally, we come to Ramesh. Looking ahead, what key reforms or collaborations would you recommend to make Sri Lanka's electoral process more inclusive and accessible for every voter? You discuss certain things about this. Why don't you wrap up?
Disability, women, and ethnic minorities, and so on. And at the same time, we also need to seriously think about delimitation, which is also on the discussion table for many, many years. So in the delimitation process, this fair representation, equal participation, equal representation, all these elements should be taken into account to ensure ethnic representation and participation of all communities in the electoral process. And also the election commission and the interest parties can join with civil society organizations to undertake greater voter education program, which is also very important because as Dr. Anila mentioned, we are producing politicians, low quality politicians, because we don't have critical citizens in this country. So we need critical citizens to produce high quality politicians with integrity, honesty, and so on. And we also need to build trust in the electoral system to ensure greater participation, and building inclusive democracy and inclusive citizenship is also another important area to ensure greater participation of all citizens in this country. And finally, very importantly, digital democracy. We need to promote digital democracy. We are living in the digital world, so therefore we need to educate our young generation on digital democracy. And so these are some of the policy prescription I would like to make. And finally, to respond Dr. Ranga's question, what kind of democracy we need? I would say we don't need Western imposed liberal democracy. T is completely frustrated and disappointed with this Western imposed liberal democratic model. That is why they went to streets. That is why they took streets to topple the government, to oust the politicians, the authoritarian rulers. Because the liberal democratic model has continuously produced political elites.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. What a wonderful discussion we had. So maintaining electoral integrity is not the sole duty of the Election Commission. It requires become a culture, not merely a regulation. Then, for instance, through accessible information for differently abled voters. Ramesh was talking about the marginalized groups. Or digital outreach that connects youth in remote or estate areas. Even the best design electoral systems fail to inspire participation. So in conclusion, today's discussion reaffirmed that voter participation and electoral integrity are inseparable. One reinforces the other. When citizens believe the system is fair, they participate. And when participation is broad and inclusive, it strengthens legitimacy and stability. So as we move forward, let us commit to a democracy that not only counts every vote, but also values every voter, men and women, young and old, urban and rural, majority and minority alike. So our collective goal should be to create an electoral environment where no citizen feels excluded and where every Sri Lankan can proudly say, my voice matters and my vote counts. On behalf of the Election Commission of Sri Lanka, I extend heartfelt thanks to our panelists. I really enjoyed by having you here. For their rich insights, to all participants for your engagement, and to the organizing team for their dedication. Let us continue this conversation beyond today. Through research, I'm very much interested in that. Advocacy and action, so that Sri Lanka's democracy grows even stronger, more inclusive, and more trusted in the years to come. Thank you very much.
And we request the chair and the panelists be on. And to assist the chairman, we welcome Mr. Rasika Piris, the additional Commissioner of Elections, be on stage to give away the token of appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, for the excellent commitment and the conduct of the fireside chat, the chair, Professor Lakshman Dissanayake. Thank you, sir. And up next, Dr. Ranga Kalam Surya. Dr. Ajanta Athakorada, Director, University of Columbus School of Computing. Dr. Pakisoti Sadavanabottu, Founder, Executive Director, Center for Policy Alternatives. Dr. Ramesh Ramaswamy, Senior Lecturer, University of Peradeniya. Dr. N.S. Aryaratna, Senior Lecturer, University of Rome. And we take this opportunity to extend our thanks to the Chairman of the Election Commission and Mr. Rasika Peris, and those who received the token of appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our duty up next to welcome Mr. Saman Sri Ratnayake, Commissioner General of Elections, and along with him to assist him, Mr. Chindaka Kularatna, Assistant Commissioner of Election, to give away the token of appreciation to the panelists, in fact, the review committee members, who really did a fantastic job in terms of taking the challenge of reviewing more than 250 papers for this particular endeavor. A great task in appreciation at this occasion. We call upon Dr. Ramesh Ramaswamy, a member of the review committee. And up next, Dr. Ajanta Athakorada. And up next, Dr. Atula Vithanavasa. Thank you, Mr. Saman Sri Ratnayake, Commissioner General of Elections, and Mr. Chindaka Kularatna, Assistant Commissioner of Elections. Ladies and gentlemen, the fire chat that really came to an end with a great important emphasis being the most important areas, really we learned many things out of the outcome of this fire chat. And it is time to just take a little entertainment fact to our consideration to keep ourselves a little relieved. Ladies and gentlemen, Department of Cultural Affairs making this arrangement to keep you entertained at this occasion. The stages are really getting the preliminary preparations for their performance. Sri Lanka has a very rich tradition of drum beats, a great important tradition of drum performers, particularly region-wise, divided, and a great important legacy that we inherit from our ancestors. So we are here to witness a fusion of such wonderful performance performed by Department of Culture and Affairs dancing troupe. That was a great performance presented by Department of Cultural Affairs of Sri Lanka. Ladies and gentlemen, up next we are here to witness the virtual presentation, which was a novel addition to this important symposium. So featuring today in the virtual presentation, Commissioner General of Elections, Commission of the Russian Federation, Mr. Pavel V. Andreev. Mr. Pavel V. Andreev was born on February 6, 1980 in Leningrad, USSR. He is an alumnus of the Moscow State Institute of International Relations University under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, 2002. He holds a master's degree from the University of Westminster, 2009. And he is a graduate of the Higher School of the Russian Presidential Academy of the National Economy and Public Administration, RANEPA, 2019. From 2002 to 2007, Mr. Andreev served in the Information and Press Department of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and at the Russian Embassy in the United Kingdom. Between 2007 and 2009, he worked as a deputy head of the representative office of the RIA, Novelty News Agency in the UK. And from 2009 to 2014, he served as the head of the Center for International Projects at RIA Novelty. Topics of the presentation, ladies and gentlemen: work of election managers with youth experience of the Election Commission system of the Russian Federation. Put your hands together and welcome for the virtual presentation, Mr. Pavel V. Andreev.
Dear colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this remarkable event. It's a great honor and privilege to address you today. My speech will be dedicated to a topic that is highly relevant to each of us today. We work in the field of public policy, and our utmost endeavors strive to maintain the level of trust in the institution of elections among our voters. Naturally, it is extremely important in this dialogue to find the right words for each target audience. The most challenging, yet at the same time the most interesting of these is the youth. The Central Election Commission of Russia has traditionally paid great attention to working with young people. However, in the last 3 years, this process has reached a new quantitative level. The number of events involving youth has multiplied. Almost every week, my colleagues in the CEC and in the regions hold various activities with the participation of young people. As the qualitative level improved as well, on the basis of constant monitoring and research of the electoral habits of the youth, we have summarized this experience and are ready to present it to you. According to the Federal State Statistics Service, the share of young people aged 14 to 35 in Russia is about 25% of the total population. This age group includes not only young voters aged 18 to 35, but also the category of future voters aged 14 to 17. Why do we consider it important to work with youth in the 12-15 age group as well? Because we're looking ahead. In less than 5 years, these young people will grow up and come to their first vote to elect the president. If we miss this category now, all further attempts to explain to them the advantages of our very open, progressive, and very voter-friendly electoral system will be in vain. Their minds will already be occupied by other ideas and imposed meanings. Youth in the electoral process can be considered in several aspects: young voters, young candidates, young members of election commissions. The roughly equal distribution among each group of young participants in the electoral process points to the stable presence of youth in the field. The main objective of working with youth is to increase their political and legal literacy and to create conditions for the exercise of the most important constitutional right, the right to elect and be elected. We are engaged in creating meanings for the younger generation, asserting that participation in the governance of the country through elections is not only an opportunity and a right, but also the duty of responsible citizen. A duty rooted in our nation's millennia-old tradition of people's rule. If we do not create this paradigm, others will create an alternative. The young mind is, as a rule, inclined towards protest and challenges. It's very easy to lose this generation. This is something which we have seen across the world. We must speak to young people in their language as equals, and then they will listen to us. In Russia, about 100,000 election commissions of various levels operate, employing over 856,000 people, of whom more than 131,000, over 15%, are young members aged 18 to 35. The highest percentage of young representatives, over 15.5%, or over 128,000 people, work at the local level in precinct commissions. We consider it a great achievement that there are precinct commissions in the country composed entirely of youth. Currently, we have 5 such commissions with an average age of 22 years old. On the Unified Voting Day in September 2025, the number of young voters in Russia was 26.2 million people, about 25% of all voters. The number of young voters in Russia will remain around 23-24% by the 2026 parliamentary elections. We know that while this is a significant group for us, in many countries of the global south, where youth comprise 40, 60 or more of voters, building effective communication with them is even more crucial. This is a huge category of citizens with whom it is necessary to work purposefully and specifically, and not just on the eve of voting, but throughout the inter-election period. There is a steady increase in the number of first-time voters, aged 18. On the voting day in 2025, nearly 1.5 million people voted for the first time. At the 2026 parliamentary election, this figure will reach 1.63 million people. This category of voters requires our special attention. Young people should not only come to their first elections, but also remember them. Election commissions pay special attention to first-time voting. Across the country, campaigns are held for first-time voters. They receive commemorative souvenirs from the election system. Photo zones are organized at the polling stations, and mass events with youth participation are held. We constantly accumulate and develop this practice. For instance, we have prepared a guide on working with first-time voters. This year, we approached our regular partners, major organizations and companies, asking them to participate in the program of activities for first-time voters, and to offer them promotional codes, special deals, and souvenir products to ensure their first voting experience is memorable. When it comes to youth activity as candidates, almost 25% of those nominated for the September Unified Voting Day under the age of 35 were elected. Over 21,000 candidates from this age group were nominated for the elections, and among them 5,318 were elected, making the share of young people among all elected candidates about 12%. Key platforms for interaction with youth in our system are educational projects and Olympiads from the Russian Center for Electoral Technologies Training at the CEC, competition programs conducted by the Russian Fund for Free Elections, and youth election commissions, voluntary organizations which have been established across the country to accumulate future election officials. Our competitions help young people when applying to higher educational institutions. They grant bonus points and privileges. The CEC also has a working group on the implementation of youth electoral projects. We address issues of informing young people about elections and our services, involving them in our projects by creating joint events with our partners. This work is active. These are educational projects with higher and secondary educational organizations, the Ministry of Education, youth movements, non-profit organizations, and information partners. We actively participate in major international forums and festivals. Our young election organizers are regular participants of those. We have also seen genuine interest from the international community in our elections and demand for methodological assistance on the work we have been doing to reach out to the youth. Since 2023, we have been organizing specialized international courses for young election organizers and electoral experts. Over 2 years, dozens of people from nearly 30 countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the CIS have participated in our programs. The course includes lectures, seminars, meetings with experts and party representatives. And of course, we show them our hospitable and beautiful country. The format of such training courses offers promising platform for building durable links with partners in electoral systems worldwide and for establishing new contacts with foreign election authorities. After participating in these programs, participants are deeply impressed by the standards of our electoral system and often express a desire to adopt our experience and technologies for elections in their own countries. Since our work with youth is ongoing and systematic, we were inspired to recognize the best of the best and to have more focused discussions with youth activists. Thus, the first nationwide youth forum, Vybar FM, was born, a forum where we could discuss new ideas, address challenges, and work on exciting new projects. About 200 participants aged 18 to 27 from almost every region of the country were selected to attend. Active members of election commissions at various levels, staff members, representatives of youth election commissions, and young people with an active civic position genuinely interested in the electoral process were present. As a result, under the guidance of experienced mentors and moderators, the participants developed 20 electoral projects, of which 5 were winners of the forum and are now at the implementation stage. Most of these projects are about communication, aimed at involving youth in the electoral process. We are glad we managed to look at our practices through the eyes of young people, and we plan to hold the next forum in March 2026. Seeing the interest of young foreign colleagues in our experience, we are considering turning the forum into an international event. To summarize, 5 main conclusions from our work. First, youth form an important important target audience in the context of the electoral process, deserving and requiring specialized communication. Second, it is necessary to consider citizens in this age group as voters, as candidates, and as election organizers. The development of programs for each category has its own features. At the same time, ensuring communication among them is crucial. Third, the foundation for successful youth engagement is legal education and involvement in practical activities. It is important to use the full range of tools, from targeted media products to information campaigns, masterclasses, Olympiads, and practical projects. Fourth, the key to properly preparing young voters and working with future voters lies in organizing educational events at schools, holding elections to school self-government, working with textbooks, and creating child-friendly informational entertainment content. Fifth, youth are very open to all things new. The more platforms for communication and exchange for experience there will be, the more of this group of citizens we can positively introduce and involve in the electoral process. The role of international platforms here cannot be overstated. In communication with peers from other countries, young people grasp the importance of the topic, become more aware of the advantages and shortcomings of their own country's system, and adopt new experiences. From the results of our programs, we see cohesion and the emergence of friendships among youth from different continents, which will undoubtedly contribute to the sustainable and peaceful development of the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. I wish you all a fruitful discussion and practical outcome to make elections in the world fair and inclusive.
We extend our thanks to Mr. Pavel V. Andrew, the Commissioner, Central Election Commission of the Russian Federation. Ladies and gentlemen, understanding the challenges of the same scenario in various parts of the globe, we could understand the similarities and, of course, the differences, the unique ways of different territories encountering. So I'm sure this one classic example of this Russian Federation-based virtual presentation brought us a great important message that if we keep on just focusing on various territories, it has its own way of tackling and strategic approaches to find the facing challenges. So, particularly in Sri Lanka, we do have a variety of important challenges. That's why the Election Commission of Sri Lanka making the fullest effort by just conducting an important annual research symposium of this nature, 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to take part in the second panel discussion of the symposium today. From the reactive to readiness, the role of potential planning and risk management in strengthening electoral readiness. What a wonderful topic it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite the moderator today to conduct the program, Ms. Ramona Stephen, Program Officer, IFES Sri Lanka. Ramona Stephen is a Program Officer at the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, IFES, with over 7 years of experience in the development sector. In a current role, she works closely with the Election Commission of Sri Lanka, supporting operational planning, workshop, and media team. Additionally, she works on advancing youth advocacy initiatives and currently serves as IFES Communications focal point. Her professional expertise spans youth engagement, advocacy, women's empowerment, and communications, and holds a bachelor's degree in biological science from the California State University, USA, and master's degree in sustainable management from the University of Bedfordshire, UK. Put your hands together and welcome Ramona Stevens on stage. And taking part as panelists today, Ms. Silja Pasilina, Senior Country Director, IFES Sri Lanka. Please, madam, we appear on stage. Mr. Pulasti Pathiranage, Assistant Commissioner, Director, District Elections Office, Mathura. Mr. Lakshita Bandara, Assistant Commissioner, District Election Office, Putlam. The panelists are making their way onto the stage, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hand over the second session to the moderator right now.
Hi. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a little bit of a tricky time that we're working with, but we'll try our best to keep you engaged. And also, very fittingly, we have titled our discussion today, A Lightning Chat. So we promise that we're not going to take too much of your time. Our theme today will be on operations planning and risk management. And we have a distinguished panel of speakers here today with us. We have Celia Pasolina, a Senior Country Director of the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. During this discussion, she will be giving a global perspective on operational planning and risk management, how it has been used globally, practiced, and also contextualized to our context here in Sri Lanka. Next, we have Mr. Lakshita Jananayaka. He's the Assistant Commissioner of the districts in Puttalam, and he will kind of give us insights from the past 3 elections. And also he'll highlight the importance of interagency coordination during elections. Last but not least, we have Mr. Pulasti Pathirana. He will discuss the role of risk management and also how the Election Commission of Sri Lanka has been institutionalizing operational
ඇතිවටද සියලු පාර්ශ්වකරුවන් සම්බන්ධීකරණය සහ නිසිපරිදි මෙහෙයුම් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීම ඉතාම
Most notably, strategic operational planning has fostered effective, streamlined systems underpinned by strong interagency coordination with other government actors such as the police, local administrators, and ministries. They established joint planning committees to operate more cohesively during election time through clear communication, shared priorities, and timely collaboration. In Sri Lanka, the Election Commission has taken a major leap forward with the introduction of the Operational Planning and Risk Management Framework, a structured system to anticipate, plan, and respond to risk throughout the entire electoral cycle. In May 2023, the International Foundation for Electoral Systems launched the Executive Curriculum in Electoral Leadership, or IXL, for ECSL's senior management. The program strengthened leadership and planning skills in every area, from interagency coordination, operational planning, logistics and procurement, to strategic communications and crisis management. Today, this approach has transformed the way elections are planned and managed, optimizing years of institutional knowledge and experience into a sustainable, well-structured framework for proactive, scenario-based planning and continuous improvement. From early identification of risks to developing contingency measures, officials are now better equipped with the tools to plan ahead, ensuring operations remain smooth, secure, and transparent.
மாவட்ட மட்டங்களில் இதனை செயற்படுத்துவது, தேர்தல் கடமைகளை செயற்படுத்துவது, தேர்தல் ஏனைய அதிகாரிகள் அலுவலர்களை ஒருங்கிணைத்து இந்த வேலை திட்டங்களை மேற்கொள்வதற்கு இந்த ஆபரேஷனல் பிளான், இந்த ஸ்ட்ராட்டஜி, இந்த திட்டம் மிகவும் ஒரு உறுதுணையாக அமையும் என்று எந்த விதமான மாற்று கருத்தும் இல்லை. ඇත්තටම මේ මෙහෙයුම් සැලැස්ම කියන එක හඳුන්වා දීමත් එක්ක මේ වෙනකොට ඇත්තටම දිස්ත්‍රික්කවල මේ මැතිවරණ ක්‍රියාවලියට අදාළ මූලික සංවිධාන කටයුතු ඒ වගේම කමිටුවල රාජකාරීමය කටයුතු සහ මැතිවරණයට අදාළ වෙන අනෙකුත් කටයුතු යම් විධිමත් පියවරට විධිමත් විදිහට යන ආකාරය අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්.
Operational planning and risk management are now at the heart of Sri Lanka's electoral process, strengthening preparedness, transparency, and public trust. By working together, the Election Commission of Sri Lanka is building a process that is resilient, credible, and ready for the future, empowering institutions, enhancing democracy.
Thank you very much. That video, I think, very briefly encapsulates what we do at IFES and how operational planning and risk management frameworks have been introduced and captures the work done by the Election Commission of Sri Lanka. Today's short discussion, or the lightning chat, explores how this framework has evolved from concept to practice and how it continues to strengthen preparedness, coordination, and institutional resilience across all levels of election administration. So, with that in mind, let's turn to our first panelist, Ms. Celia. From your perspective, how has operational planning been applied globally, and how has this approach introduced and contextualized in Sri Lanka?
Thank you, Ramona. Thank you, Ramona. Okay. So first of all, the operational planning is just one part of a bigger picture. So the inspiration for this work really starts a little bit with the Australian Election Commission, because they have come up with something called a reputation management system, which speaks to a lot of different aspects of elections and trying to safeguard and protect elections from risks, especially when it comes to reputation of the Election Commission and the electoral process itself. So a key component of that is operational planning and risk mitigation. Now, we all know that what a sham election looks like. We all know when an election is not genuine. However, even genuine and smooth elections, like what we see in Sri Lanka, sometimes come under attack. And this could be due to logistical challenges. For example, ballot boxes go missing, or the ink that we use to ink our fingers after voting fades too quickly. So election commissions need to prepare properly and mitigate these risks before they occur. So this is why we think operational planning and risk mitigation are really critical to this work. And the Election Commission of Sri Lanka has embraced this, and I really applaud their efforts to try to tackle these very concrete core concepts and make them manifest in the electoral process in Sri Lanka. And operational planning is really a more detailed version of a strategic plan. And the Election Commission of Sri Lanka has a strategic plan, as we all know. In fact, it's preparing its third one or finalizing it as we speak. So it's been a really good tool to kind of guide the process of operational planning. And also in our work with the Ethiopian Election Commission, for example, we've noticed that it's very important to make sure that the officers of the Election Commission are involved in the operational planning process. It's not just one person sitting with an Excel spreadsheet coming up with a plan. No, it involves a lot of people, and those people need to know why planning is important and also be part of it. So in Sri Lanka, the Election Commission, the work started with the top leadership to get their concurrence and make sure that they are comfortable with the idea and that they want to pursue this for the institution. And then taking it down to the district level, right? So we'll soon hear from the districts on this more. But also a lesson from the Ukrainian Election Commission, for example, was that the Election Commission does not conduct elections alone. It needs help from other state actors, both at the central level and at the lower levels where elections are actually run and operated. So we need help from other government departments and other electoral stakeholders. And so that's been a really important feature of this whole process because those people can also help to identify risks to elections. And we heard even from the panel earlier today, we heard a lot of really good examples of the types of risks that we face now, but also in the future, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, disinformation, AI, all these things. So we have been working very closely with the Election Commission on these things, but I do think that actually the most important and most interesting information will come from the districts because this is really where elections are run. So the district officers are in a very critical position and can really bring examples of the work that they have been doing with other stakeholders and with their teams in the district. So actually, I wanted to hand it back to Ramona so we can get on to Matara and Puttalam. Thanks.
Thank you, Celia, and thank you for sharing those examples from around the world. Turning to our next panelist, Ms. Lakshita. Over the past 2 years, the Election Commission of Sri Lanka has managed effectively and successfully 3 elections, major elections. How did operational planning support more effective coordination, resource management, and responsiveness across these events? And also, can you briefly share the improvements you've observed in communication flows, planning cycles, and most importantly, interagency coordination among both government and non-government actors?
Okay, thank you, Ramona. I think you have heard that saying that election is the most intense operation that a peaceful country have, because it seconds only to a full-scale war. People may have different arguments, but I mentioned it because it clearly represents and showcase the actual ground level situation we are facing during. So we have to mobilize thousands of employees, government employees, officers, and institutions also. And we can name much larger resources also. So this mobility, and we have to work to a fixed time frame and under strict public scrutiny. So it's very intense in the scale of, in the sense of scale and the coordination. So in this environment, in that type of environment, planning is not something optional. We have to do proper planning and stick into the plan. Otherwise, things will easily go wrong. So in past election, we had some improvement with, we can mention it as a transformational change because we followed a good strategic plan, and under that we have this operational plans. So it facilitated us to make a framework, to based on that and anticipate on the challenges, overcome the challenges, and minimize the risk. And with having that good plan, it clearly help to align our other stakeholders also to overcome these challenges. So in the district level, we can experience this very clearly. And we have some operational committees working, and we shared a shared plan in the election, during the election. So it enables to coordinate with other agencies like other government institutions, and as well as some private entities, suppliers, for example. And we have to closely work with the police and other security forces on deployment and security plans, and with educational authorities, because most of the polling stations as well as the counting centers are established in schools, especially in my district. So, and on the other hand, we had to closely work with local councils and district divisional secretariats. So this coordination was very easy because we all shared a similar plan. And if I mention some things about my district, Putlam, we have limited resources, and especially human resource. When we talk about assistant returning officers and SPOs as well as chief counting officers, we are lacking these resources, and vehicles especially. Vehicles, we don't have enough vehicles in the district. So we, during the planning stage, we identified these issues, and we could take proactive actions with the help of commission, and we contacted Colombo and other nearby district who have more resources on that. And without any last minute disruptions, we could conduct elections very smoothly. Just because we plan properly. And having a good plan is very important because everybody knows what they are doing, and they identify their importance and what their role also. So it was very important. No? And with the help of the mentioned programs, with the help of IFES, and we had some meetings with our AROs and other people who are directly involved in with our operation. We had back-to-back 3 elections. So after each election, we could improve our plan based on the experience. So it was very helpful, and it helped really to run the elections smoothly, planning stages.
Thank you, Mr. Lakshita. And I think thanks for sharing very specific examples from Puttalam, and also the very important role in coordination and collaboration with stakeholders in the electoral process. The last question is to Mr. Pulasti from the District Elections Office in Matra. The question to you is, risk management is central to operational planning. Could you share how your teams identified and mitigated risks, and how those exercises influenced improved team performance and readiness? And beyond election periods, how are these helping institutional learning and resilience more broadly?
Thanks, Ramona. Actually, risk management is indeed a crucial and non-negotiable content of the electoral operations.